Let me call the next panel. The next panel to come up. The next panel consists of signatories, representatives of signatories to the Under 2 MOU. The moderator for this meeting is Libby Ferguson of the Climate Group, which forms the secretariat of the Under 2 MOU. And I want to make in transition one comment that comes from my standpoint as a Californian. That deep decarbonization pathways are as important for subnational governments as they are for national governments. And in the US, for example, where states have a great deal of control over the energy system, it is possible for a state like California to lead the way on a low carbon transformation, no matter what the federal government does. And DDPs, deep decarbonization pathways, are an explicit and essential part of California's climate policy decision making, and I'm sure this will come up in the panel. Libby and she'll introduce the rest of the Under 2 MOU team.
And I'd just like to introduce my speakers. So we have Ken Alex from the Government of California walking on the stage. We have Stuart Hocking from the Government of South Australia, and I'm very pleased to welcome the Governor of Jalisco in Mexico, Aristoteles Sandoval. The Governor, if you'd like to take a seat here. And I think we had an opportunity for Daniel Bira, if he hasn't left already. He offered to help with translation. You've got to run off. Okay, thank you very much. If you'd like to take a seat at the end, and a multi-talented man, he's offered to translate as well as run the Mexican DDPP, so thank you very much, Daniel. My name is Libby Ferguson, and I'm States and Regions Director at the Climate Group. And we had the honour at last year's COP to be announced as Secretariat for the Under 2 Coalition. For those of you who do not know the Under 2, it is a really ambitious commitment driven by state-level governments. So the state of California and all of the people up on stage here are signatories to the Under 2 MOU. And it is a commitment for at least 80% to 95% emissions reduction by 2050, or a limit of 2 tons per capita. And since its launch in 2015, we have today announced a further 29 signatories to the Under 2 MOU, and a huge number of those signatories are from China. We also have new signatories from Indonesia, from Mexico, from Italy and Australia, joining a coalition that now numbers 165 jurisdictions, driven by subnational governments, by states, by provinces, by regions, and with also city signatories and national government endorsements. This coalition represents 1 billion people and a third of the global economy. So we are a growing force to be reckoned with, and we're all committing to deep emissions cuts by 2050. So leading on from the discussion that we had earlier, where we've been told it is possible, we now have to mesh the pathway planning with the commitment and really understand what it means in practice for these ambitious subnational governments that are taking this step. So it is my absolute pleasure to be joined by this esteemed group of speakers. And we're going to look at the first question on this session, which is really your motivations for joining the Under 2 Coalition, and why pathway planning to 2050 is so important for your governments. And I'm going to start with the Governor of Jalisco, Aristoteles Sandoval. Governor.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you for the translation. Para el gobierno subnacional es importante participar de este Under 2 MOU para poder planear, transparentar la emisión de gases la utilización de energía limpia, poniendo el ejemplo como gobierno, y además en una política transversal que podamos nosotros incentivar al sector privado y público a poder cambiar esta forma.
So for subnational governments, it is very important to be part of this under 2 MOU, to start planning and making transparent the initiatives that will be required for our energy systems and for how we develop our plans.
Es importante esta reunión donde el gobierno nacional, los gobiernos subnacionales y locales nos estamos poniendo de acuerdo para alcanzar esta meta al 2050. En Jalisco es del 100% de utilizar las energías limpias en el consumo de todos los servicios como transporte público, metro o los organismos de operación como son de agua.
It's very important to have meetings like this where we can coordinate between the international, national, state and local government. In the state of Jalisco in particular, we are planning to use clean energy for public transport, for the metro and for other services such as the water system.
No es un reto fácil el que los políticos locales entiendan el cambio climático. No ha sido sencillo convencer a los municipios de poder adaptarnos a esta agenda contra el cambio climático. Hoy un consejo, a través de capacitación y modelos de operación, lo estamos logrando ya casi al 50%, por ejemplo, en el estado de Jalisco, de 125 municipios, el 50% ya se convenció de esto.
It is not easy to get municipal level authorities to buy into this approach and to give climate change such importance. But there has been a constant effort on capacity building and communicating these messages, and today 50% of the 125 municipalities of the state of Jalisco have agreed to work in this way.
Por eso es importante nuestra participación en esta COP22, para poder convencer cada vez más a los políticos locales de sumarse a estas estrategias. Transporte público, que es de orden municipal o estatal, calidad de aire y sobre todo, si no hay una regulación que permita la operación de estas industrias para la utilización y generación de energía limpia, sería imposible avanzar en países como México.
And that's why it's important for us to be here in this COP, for our local governments to appreciate the importance and to get this recognition, and for areas such as public transport, it is fundamental that we start making these changes at our municipal level. Public transport is a municipal attribution by law in Mexico.
Por último, referir que hoy estamos logrando un cambio de paradigma. Estamos invirtiendo más en el transporte público, incentivando el uso de auto eléctrico o híbrido con incentivos fiscales desde el gobierno y creando un fondo verde que nos va a permitir orientar recursos e invertir para acciones contra el cambio climático e infraestructura para la utilización de energía limpia o energía renovable.
And as a final comment, we really are pushing in the state of Jalisco to produce this paradigm shift in public transport through fiscal incentives of electric and hybrid vehicles. And also to enable the infrastructure, the grid infrastructure, so that renewable electricity is more easily available and can serve the communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. And it is great that we see in the subnational work that we've got so many leaders of state governments taking up this effort, and it really makes a difference right across the sector. Talking of state government leaders, California has obviously been making huge progress in leading in the US, and Ken Alex is Special Advisor to Governor Jerry Brown of California. And Ken, will you talk a little bit about the Pathways work in California and what it's taught you and what you're sharing with others? Thank you.
Sure. Okay, this is, yeah. So California, as many of you know, is by standing by itself the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. So as we evaluate how we're going to do reductions, it's really taking on a large-scale industrialized developed economy across extensively numerous sectors. So we've spent quite a long time, and Jim Williams, who spoke in the previous panel, helped us with some of our work in looking at the deep decarbonization pathways. Among the things that we were particularly interested in were what are some of the options if we can't get enough emission reduction out of one sector, where are sectors where we can get more reduction? What are things that perhaps we're not aware of that could cause us problems? And just as an example of that, I think we expected to use biofuels for quite a fair amount of our reduction. And it turns out that even in California that there are probably not enough biofuels to do all that we had hoped to do. So that was a very practical lesson. These are not specific directions for how you're going to do the reductions, but they give you ideas, they give you trade-offs, and they create certain ways to think about the set of issues. And also how sectors, as Jim talked about in his session, really move from one sector to the other, how the relationship of transportation to electrical generation, etc., are all connected, and you have to do them in unison, and you have to do them early. So among the things that we learned is that there are 4 areas of transition. Efficiency, these won't surprise you, but they're really good to see when you work it through. Energy efficiency, fuel switching, renewables, and decarbonization of fuels. These are the essential 4. One thing that our decarbonization pathways did not look at in great detail, because it's quite difficult, was the impact and the relationship of land use decisions. And that cuts across all of these sectors. So over the past year, California has spent a significant amount of time trying to develop how to do land use evaluation better. What are the emissions from the forest sector? What happens with forest fires? How do we increase uptake in soils? What is the impact of the agricultural sector? And what happens when you develop those areas and create greater emissions through that development? These are huge sets of areas that, as we thought about them, really started to impact how we thought about our legal system and the implications for our laws. So when we passed a set of laws over the last 2 years, it was very much based on our pathways evaluation. So in California, we now have a law that requires a doubling of energy efficiency in buildings. We have a law that requires evaluation of short-lived climate pollutant reductions. And we have laws requiring 50% renewables in our power sector, all by 2030. And all of those are reflective of what we need to do based on the pathways work that was done by Lawrence Berkeley Labs and a consulting firm called E3. So all of these things really have a practical set of implications. And we, of course, are very happy to share with others who are interested in it and other industrialized entities that I think can learn quite a lot. And then on the land use sector, as we develop that, we think it has implications around the world. So I think I'll stop there.
Thanks, Ken. And I would just add that California were the first in the US to do it. It wasn't the national government. And we're seeing from the work of California that more and more states across the US are looking at this work and picking it up. So thank you for your leadership and some good news that we're seeing over this week. I'm going to now move across to the other part of the world, to Australia, and South Australia have for a very long time been a very strong voice on climate action, and Premier Jay Weatherill has been a strong advocate. Stuart Hocking is Deputy Chief Executive of the Department of Treasury and Finance, so we're seeing it across all areas of government that are looking at this issue. Stuart, will you talk a little bit about your announcement last year and the work that's happening in South Australia on this issue?
Thank you, Libby. South Australia has had climate change targets since 2007. They're in legislation. But last year we set about looking at how we could have a much more ambitious set of targets in line with the decarbonisation work. We appointed an expert panel of 3 leading climate change thinkers in Australia, 2 of whom have been involved deeply in the decarbonisation pathways project that we heard about in the previous session. And they came back to us and said it was not only feasible but important for South Australia to set a net zero emissions target for 2050. So our new climate change strategy adopts that target. We released it just in the lead up to the Paris climate change talks last year. And it also includes our carbon neutral Adelaide initiative. Adelaide is the capital city of South Australia. In the city centre, the central business district, over the next 5 years, we are hoping just to position Adelaide as the world's first carbon neutral city. The Premier of South Australia, Jay Weatherill, signed the Under 2 MOU in Paris last December, and we see this as an important milestone in achieving a net zero emissions economy. And we're starting from a position where we've already made a lot of progress. So over 40% of the energy generated in South Australia comes from renewable sources at the moment. We're well on our way to our target of 50% by 2025. Since 1990, our emissions overall have reduced by 8%, while our economy has grown by 60%. So we've seen the evidence that we can decouple economic growth from emissions growth. Our journey to a net zero emissions economy will be achieved by the same sorts of things that Ken was just talking about and others have talked about: further increasing renewable energy generation, electrification and fuel switching, energy efficiency, reducing our emissions from transport, and also from carbon sequestration. In the short term, the government itself is tackling this directly through its own emissions from its own activities. We are contracting renewable energy for our own electricity supply, initially to support the Carbon Neutral Adelaide initiative. We're improving the energy efficiency of our government buildings, and we're adding electric vehicles to our government's own car fleet. So we have our early pathways, but the next step is to work on those longer term pathways. And this is an important process which will involve significant community engagement. Having set the target, that sets the signal and starts the conversations about what we need to do, how we need to get there, and how we're going to sequence it over time. More importantly, we think, apart from the global effort, there are other benefits to be gained from pursuing this agenda. The expert panel told us that it will include new industries, new jobs, more livable cities, and better land management. Our economy, like many developed economies around the world, is going through a significant transition. Our car industry in South Australia will close next year. We've lost a range of manufacturing jobs, and so we need to develop new industries, new technologies, new jobs, and support innovation. Some people worry about the impact of decarbonisation on economic growth. We see it from a completely different perspective, that as an economy in transition from old industries to new, that supporting low carbon investment and businesses has got to be a key part of transitioning our economy. So this is a fundamental part of our economic development strategy overall. It also has important social benefits, creating more livable cities, better public transport, more cycling options, and a range of other issues. So we see our commitment to a net zero emission society as not being only helpful in the global effort, but as having a range of significant benefits for our own community as well.
Thank you, Stuart. We have 5 minutes left, but I want to pick up on this issue of collaboration that's come through the 3 panels actually. And I'd just like to invite each speaker to talk for 1 minute about where you see the opportunity for collaboration, not just between levels of governments and with academics in your country, but also the opportunity presented by the Under 2 Coalition for international collaboration and the opportunity it presents to you.
En el sector energético tenemos una gran oportunidad colaborando efectivamente no solamente con el sector académico, sino con la industria. Hoy Jalisco tiene un gran potencial y México en producción de energía solar, eólica y geotermia, por ejemplo.
We see strong collaboration links with academia and with industry in the energy sector. In particular, we have very strong potential for wind, solar and geothermal energy in Mexico.
Y en ese sentido, acuerdos como MOU o la Cumbre de las Américas, que tuvimos un llamado a la acción, pudimos colaborar con otros organismos o con otros gobiernos subnacionales y locales para establecer, por ejemplo, nuestra agencia de energía, para poder tener mecanismos en materia de deforestación y sobre todo en cómo reducir las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero al 2030. Queremos movernos muy rápido y la colaboración internacional con gobiernos subnacionales y sector privado nos ha ayudado a alcanzar nuestras metas de manera muy rápida, que es lo que queremos al 2030, no solo al 2050.
And in this way, the Under 2 MOU and other subnational government collaboration instances have helped the government of Jalisco establish its own energy agency, strengthen its forestry and land use capabilities, and overall just accelerate the pace of getting the change to happen across the state.
Por eso es tan importante movernos rápido y no esperar los acuerdos nacionales, sino avanzar en lo local, convenciendo y concientizando que esta es una tarea que cambia el planeta desde lo local, desde la comunidad. Y en eso es en lo que estamos trabajando, haciendo más productiva nuestros programas de reducción de emisión de carbono, teniendo inclusive utilidades en zonas forestales.
And so that's why it's very important for subnational governments to not wait for the national governments, to continue with these initiatives, to continue driving the reduction of greenhouse gases, and to structure specific programs that can, for example, in communities that live in forested areas, actually see where there are business models that can be profitable for them.
Thank you.
So I agree with everything that the governor said, which is always a good thing to do, by the way. Let me add this. As Libby said, there are now 160 or so jurisdictions that are part of the Under 2 Coalition. And what we would like to do is to have those jurisdictions work together on some of their pathways will be similar. So perhaps a rural area in Nigeria and a rural area in Costa Rica will have similar sets of issues, and also some contrasting sets of issues, but put their pathways together, talk about what is working in a particular part of the world and jurisdictions that are moving forward in an aggressive way to reduce emissions, and then talk about what is working and what doesn't work and how to make it better and to move more quickly. That's a lot of the idea of this coalition. So because of our time, I'll stop there.
Yeah, agree very much with what the Governor and Ken have just said. We were one of the founding members of the States and Regions Alliance in South Australia. We've seen through this how important it is for subnational governments to work together, how they're becoming an increasingly important voice in this debate, and we can become a louder collective voice through this partnership, I think. We can also share ideas on policy, on funding, and I think we really need to work harder to include some of the developing countries in this partnership as well. And we talked yesterday about a future fund that we're setting up for that purpose, to try and share those ideas. So we see great benefits in this international engagement and expanding them through the Under 2 Coalition. There are other partnerships that are very important to South Australia. The community partnerships, we've just had our last coal-fired power station in South Australia closed down. There's a big transition issue there. We need to work with workers in the communities, etc. and there are national issues that where, like many subnational governments, our policy positions aren't always aligned with our national government, and it's important to keep that dialogue open and find areas of shared understanding. And finally, in terms of engagement for South Australia, I might just mention that in Lonely Planet have just voted South Australia one of the top 5 holiday destinations for 2017. So if you're keen to explore this with South Australia further, I encourage you to come next year. It'd be a very trendy thing to do. And you can stay at my house if you want.
Thank you, Stuart. Well, a very warm welcome to go, and I recommend going to see what's happening in South Australia because it really is truly world leading. The messages I've heard from this session are it's possible, there is strong political will in every part of the world for doing this. We are as ambitious, if not more ambitious, in terms of the commitments that we're making, and we are moving faster. We are here to support our national governments, but we will not wait for you to lead. We are here as partners, but we are going to move forward and on this on our own. And I would just like to thank our panellists, Governor Aristoteles Sandoval, Director of the Governor's Planning Unit in California, Ken Alex, and Deputy Chief Executive of South Australia's Treasury Department, Stuart Hocking, and of course Daniel for his translation. Can you join me in thanking everybody, please?